Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. At the end of the Dwapara Yuga, I studied this great supplement of Vedic literature named Srimad Bhagavatam, which is equal to all the Vedas, from my father, Srila Dvaipayana Vyasadeva. Report. The statement made by Srila Shukadeva Goswami that the topmost transcendentalist, who is beyond the jurisdiction of regulations and restrictions, mainly takes to the task of hearing about and glorifying the personality of Godhead, is verified by his personal example. Shukadeva Goswami, being a recognized liberated soul and the topmost transcendentalist, was accepted by all of the topmost sages present in the meeting during the last 7 days of Maharaj Parikshit. He cites from the example of his life that he himself was attracted by the transcendental activities of the Lord, and he studied Srimad Bhagavatam from his great father, Sri Dvaipayana Vyasadeva. Srimad Bhagavatam, or for that matter, any other scientific literature, cannot be studied at home by one's own intellectual capacity. Medical books of anatomy or physiology are available in the market, but no one can become a qualified medical practitioner simply by reading such books at home. One has to be admitted to the medical college and study the books under the guidance of learned professors. Similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam, the postgraduate study of the science of Godhead, can only be learned by studying it at the feet of a realized soul like Srila Vyasadeva. Although Shukadeva Goswami was a liberated soul from the very day of his birth, he still had to take lessons of Srimad Bhagavatam from his great father Vyasadeva, who compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam under the instruction of another great soul, Sri Narada Muni. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed a learned Brahmana to study Srimad Bhagavatam from a personal Bhagavat. I think it should be person Bhagavat. Srimad Bhagavatam is based on the transcendental name, form, attributes, pastimes, entourage, and variegatedness of the Supreme Person, and it is spoken by the incarnation of the personality of Godhead, Srila Vyasadeva. Pastimes of the Lord are executed in cooperation with his pure devotees, and consequently historical incidents are mentioned in this great literature because they are related to Krishna. It is called Brahma Samitam because it is the sound representative of Lord Krishna, like the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is the sound incarnation of the Lord because it is spoken by the Supreme Lord, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the sound representative of the Lord because it was spoken by the incarnation of the Lord about the activities of the Lord. As stated in the beginning of this book, it is the essence of the Vedic desire tree and the natural commentation on the Brahma Sutras, the topmost philosophical thesis on the subject matter of Brahman. Vyasadeva appeared at the end of Dwapara Yuga as the son of Satyavati, and therefore the word Dwapara Adav, or the beginning of Dwapara Yuga, in this context means just prior to the beginning of the Kali Yuga. The logic of this statement, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, is comparable to that of calling the upper portion of the tree the beginning. The root of the tree is the beginning of the tree, but in common knowledge, the upper portion of the tree is first seen. In that way, the end of the tree is accepted as its beginning. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhano Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. By the mercy of spiritual master, blind man can see the stars, lame man can cross the mountains, and dumb man can speak eloquently. I therefore offer my respectful obeisances and the lotus feet of my spiritual master. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishta Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyati Deshikani. So I'm so happy to be with all of you today, even if it is through this distance. I'm here in Scotland and you're in Bhaktivedanta Manor or whoever else people are there online. We hope to see you in person in some near future. So we're going to this wonderful, I'm so pleased and happy actually to be going through this verse with you today because it's such a wonderful and nectarian verse. And I don't know whether you ever had a feeling and a thought what it would be like, to be born like 5,000 years ago and see Krishna personally, or what would it be like to be there and meet Lord Chaitanya 500 years ago, or even 50 years ago, meeting Srila Prabhupada and taking part in, his pastimes when he was present here. So I had actually this kind of thoughts crossing my mind a number of times, and I thought, I would be much more fired up, much more inspired. But actually, a lot of people who did meet Krishna in those days, and Lord Chaitanya and Srila Prabhupada, did not necessarily recognize their greatness and recognize that this is actually Krishna or Lord Chaitanya, or this is a great pure devotee of the Lord. So it is actually not necessarily by meeting Krishna in person that we can recognize him. It does require a certain attitude and mood and consciousness in order to recognize Krishna. And the most amazing thing, and we still have that opportunity today, despite of the fact that we haven't necessarily been there when Krishna was around and Lord Chaitanya and Srila Prabhupada, we actually can meet Krishna in a transcendental sound vibration. And we understand that from the first day in Krishna consciousness, we get educated that the holy name of the Lord is actually non-different from Krishna, and everything in the relationship, Krishna's names, qualities, pastimes, everything in relationship with Krishna is completely not different from Krishna. And actually, the same thing is with Srimad Bhagavatam. As we know, Srimad Bhagavatam is a literal incarnation of Krishna. And actually, if we approach Srimad Bhagavatam in the right consciousness, actually two most important aspects is required to be able to see Krishna in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. So number one thing is that we need to approach with the submission. The submission and humility is required, not a challenging spirit. And the second thing that is important is to receive Srimad Bhagavatam to transparent via medium of disciplic succession. And Srila Prabhupada explains again and again in Srimad Bhagavatam itself, again and again explain to us that if we receive Srimad Bhagavatam in such a way, we can actually experience the beauty and sweetness of Krishna in Srimad Bhagavatam. So Prabhupada explains as well. I just read just a couple of days ago this verse in another verse in Srimad Bhagavatam in Canto 1, Chapter 1. It's a Chapter 3, text number 40, that explains that is practically there is no difference if you approach Srimad Bhagavatam in the right mood. There is practically no difference of meeting Krishna personally in the right mood and deriving that association and blessing of Krishna. And it's exactly the same thing that we can meet Srimad Bhagavatam. And I don't know how many devotees had that experience of actually going through some difficulty or some challenge, and Srimad Bhagavatam or some other Prabhupada's book starts speaking to you and giving you a certain message, like you need to do this, and often it repeatedly happens in Srimad Bhagavatam, in the classes, in our reading, in our association, again and again. There is a certain message that comes, and Krishna almost personally starts speaking to us. And also another thing that Srimad Bhagavatam explains, that if when we meet somebody in person, especially somebody we admire or like, there is a certain kind of exchange. We like associating with people that are positive, inspiring, motivating, and etc. So there is a certain kind of exchange of relationship or rasa that is there, that satisfies us, that on material level can fulfill a certain emotional needs. But Srimad Bhagavatam is also the same. There is a certain rasa and relationship there in Srimad Bhagavatam that actually Prabhupada explains that it can satisfy all the heart's desires and hankerings. That simply by associating with Srimad Bhagavatam and studying it deeply with seriousness, and especially hearing from the people that have a very strong connection and relationship with Srimad Bhagavatam, that are transparent via mediums, that the heart has become purified by hearing and chanting of the names, glories, and pastimes of the Lord. And through that purified heart, then Krishna can manifest himself. And we all experience that by meeting our spiritual masters, meeting some really dedicated, inspired, and purified devotees, that actually their presence is so powerful. And so, a lot of doubts get removed from our heart. Sometimes we're going through various challenges and struggles and we're thinking, writing in our diary, I need to ask this, my spiritual master, when I meet him. Or I need to ask this question of the senior devotee. But when we meet that senior devotee, often we wonder, what was the doubts and what was the problems? Because a lot of those challenges becomes removed by that association, and we experience the presence of Krishna through the heart of a very sincere and pure and dedicated devotee. And we can experience so much, not only relief for some distress or misery or upliftment, but we also can experience this deeper connection. Just like personally speaking, actually, I can share with devotees one of the best experiences in my life and Krishna consciousness was actually by interacting with a devotee. Of course, we have kirtans and we have prasadam, but this 1 year I was kind of going through some challenge and purification in my spiritual life, and I was heading to Vrindavan, and I was listening to lecture of my spiritual master Raghunath Swami, and he was explaining that the most important thing for visiting a holy place is to actually you need to meet a holy person, and that will become my resolution. I realized and connected these two things together. The challenge that I'm going through will be relieved if I meet a saintly person. And as soon as I arrived in Vrindavan, that was my whole meditation, where to meet a saintly person. Of course, in Vrindavan, there's many saintly people, but I was very sincerely praying to Guru and Krishna, please guide me to one of those very, very sincere and elevated persons. And somehow or another, I don't know how, I can't remember exact details, but I realized that a saintly person is Devamrita Prabhu, and currently, of course, he is Bhakti-rasamrita Swami. But at that time, he was temple president, and he was still before his sannyas days, a brahmachari. And of course, temple presidents are such a busy people, but somehow or another, I managed to catch him somewhere and said, I really need to speak with you. And he was so compassionate, and I said, okay, I'll find you some time. And that, I don't know, it was 10, 15 minutes of interaction with him. That was and still remains actually the best experience in my spiritual life, is to meet Bhakti-rasamrita Swami for 10, 15 minutes, because she showed so much kind of unconditional love and compassion. He didn't know who I was, in the beginning anyway. It was the first time I met him in my life, and he showed so much care and compassion, and I could experience, this Krishna's love through his purified and uplifted, shining heart. And it still remains, experience that they met, representative of Krishna and experienced Krishna's love and mercy through him. So we can experience this Krishna's love and compassion through other devotees, and there's many experiences the devotees have in the classes and studying Srimad Bhagavatam, how Krishna and Srila Prabhupada as well speaks to us through the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. And that is another wonderful thing, that we can not only associate with Krishna or Lord Chaitanya and Chaitanya Chaitamrita, but we also can associate with Srila Prabhupada in his books. And despite of the fact that Prabhupada is absent physically from us, at the same time, he is fully present, of course, in his deity and murti. As we sing Guru Puja every day, if we sincerely sing, we will feel Prabhupada's presence and mercy and reciprocation with our kind of outpour of the heart of singing this beautiful song of Narottam Das Thakur. But also, we can experience Srila Prabhupada and his mercy through his writings and his purports. As we know that his purports is his transcendental ecstasies that when everybody was sleeping at night, he was writing. And the Prabhupada is described in Srimad Bhagavatam, this kind of words that come from the mouth of pure devotee is like a saffron particles of dust that emanates from the mouths of pure devotees. And those particles, saffron particles of dust, they enter in our hearts and ears, first into the ears and then into the hearts, and can purify and uplift us. And again, we can experience that mercy and purification that comes. Actually, a book is considered a best part of the person. If we meet somebody personally, how much we can interact. There is only so many hours in a day, and especially in Krishna consciousness movement, we don't have so much time just to sit down and chat. Maybe at the best, 1 or 2 hours we can spend with someone. And, often we feel that those 1 or 2 hours with some wonderful devotee of the Lord is not enough, to spend. Sometimes we have a lot to share, or we need to really a lot to hear. Some devotees have a lot of nectar to share with us, and something that is very relevant and inspiring for us. So that kind of rasa and exchange is very nourishing and inspiring, but is only so much we can spend, and only with so many people we can spend time. But if you read somebody's written book, even in the material world, usually a person puts like their best ideas in the book, and their best kind of consciousness and realizations and thoughts and the teachings. And of course, the books in the material world are contaminated with the modes of passion, ignorance, and the goodness. but still that book remains the best part of the person. You can kind of experience fully the person if you sit down and read their book. So what to speak in a transcendental sense, if we sit down and we read Srila Prabhupada's books, this is the best way for us to actually experience Srila Prabhupada and his teachings and his mercy. Is such a transparent medium, Srila Prabhupada, that he is actually transmitting the spiritual world. That is why we are so fortunate in ISKCON and International Society for Krishna Consciousness. We are so extremely and unlimitedly fortunate to be in touch with Srila Prabhupada's teachings, and everything around us is the transcendental sound vibration that Srila Prabhupada left to us, starting from Guruvashtaka, when we remember Srila Prabhupada and our spiritual master, and going through the whole day, the holy name that we received from Srila Prabhupada, pure holy name, and Guru Puja and Srimad Bhagavatam class, and we look around in the deities that, by Prabhupada's order has been installed. And of course, you are so fortunate to have Radha Gokulananda there. So at every moment of our life, we have this opportunity to receive this mercy of Srila Prabhupada completely unchanged and completely in its pure form of transcendence, as we sing, every day in Guru Puja, is non-different of what spiritual master, what Srila Prabhupada speaks, is exactly the same. If we are in the right consciousness, is exactly the same as hearing from Krishna. Is exactly the same as meeting Krishna in person, because Srila Prabhupada is such a transcendental via medium for this transcendence for Goloka Vrindavan. And we are so fortunate that we can achieve the highest and complete perfection by following Srila Prabhupada's teachings. We don't have to go anywhere else. Absolutely everything Srila Prabhupada has given to us to achieve this high perfection. And we meet in Krishna in Srimad Bhagavatam. We meet in Krishna in the form of the holy name. But by following this process, eventually, sooner or later, we actually will meet Krishna in person, face to face. Of course, this is very advanced platform, but that is absolutely no doubt that by following this process sincerely, we will come to this point that we'll see Krishna face to face in person. We have this, we have been given everything. And a part of meeting Srila Prabhupada, there are so many other personalities that we can meet in the pages of Bhagavatam. As we're reading today, Srila Shukadeva Goswami, Srila Vyasadeva, Narada Muni, Dhruva Maharaj, all these people, their consciousness, their teachings, their purity, their example is there written and present in Srimad Bhagavatam. So we have the opportunity to meet all these wonderful, wonderful devotees and actually imbibe their consciousness, their mood, and their spirit, and the culture of Srimad Bhagavatam in Kali Yuga. Everything is so upside down, but by coming in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam, which can transform our hearts and transform our consciousness and imbibe, this culture of Srimad Bhagavatam, the highest culture. And, at some point, and actually I was, being influenced so much by the lower modes, I was wondering, there is so many challenging things in Srimad Bhagavatam for the modern person, how this book actually can be, is something that illuminates all the vices and dispels all the vices of the age of Kali. But actually, again, speaking about importance of associating with the people who have the taste for Srimad Bhagavatam and connection that can illuminate our hearts, those who have a realization of Srimad Bhagavatam. So then again, actually, couple most transformational experience in my short journey in Krishna consciousness was actually Srimad Bhagavatam. Actually, of course, we don't want too much to get into pandemic, but what happens when you get the virus, you're actually starting to suffocate because of the lack of oxygen. So there was times in my spiritual life when I gave myself so much to the mission of Krishna consciousness, working so hard and giving, so much energy. Of course, with many limitations. I'm not saying that I gave everything, but to some extent I endeavored. And there was time in my Krishna consciousness when I did it at the expense of my sadhana, just thinking, I just work those extra hours and, to spread the movement so I can to some extent neglect, and Lord Chaitanya will be merciful to me because I'm just working so hard and sacrificing. So I'm sacrificing at the expense of my sadhana, then I'll still be okay. But actually, at one point in my spiritual life, I actually come to a certain, almost like a halt, because the oxygen that was coming from hearing and chanting, and you kind of can become absorbed into whatever, management and the struggles and so many things that we need to do, and preaching strategies. You can become absorbed in those that even meditating on those during japa, where we get a more responsibility in our spiritual life. So during japa, we start thinking about strategies and the things and the solutions. And during the daytime, we're trying to execute those ideas that came up during japa. And then, the day is too short to do everything what they wanted to do. And we then, doing all those extra hours, no time to read, no time for quality japa, no time for association. So I've been that and done it. Actually, it's called a school of hard knocks. And I guess, when you're influenced by mode of passion and etc., maybe for a lot of us in the Western world, we even have to go to some extent, hopefully to as short time as possible to kind of burning our passion, because otherwise if you sit down to read Bhagavatam, we kind of fall asleep, because we are too tired or we don't have any taste. So sometimes we need to burn a little bit that passion, but definitely not as long as me, try to do as short as possible to burn your passions so you can sit down and study Srimad Bhagavatam, and absorbing it and hear it, from others. So I kind of came at one point, that I was kind of suffocating in my spiritual life. So I kind of opening my heart and making myself vulnerable. I was suffocating and everything was getting dry, hearing and chanting and association. And I was wondering, what happened, so many years I was working so hard in Krishna consciousness. What is it, that I'm not getting the nectar? Where the nectar is gone, I can barely give a class, I'm not feeling the bliss in my chanting and kirtan and etc. And then, this message, as we spoke in the beginning, started to come and started to approach senior devotees and asking, what is it? I gave my life to this movement. I'm not getting the inspiration, etc. What happened? What I neglected, And then this message started to come out that actually I sacrificed so much, but I did it at the expense of my hearing and chanting. I neglected my hearing and chanting and quality of hearing and chanting. And devotees started to encourage me, you need to get into this medicine of Srimad Bhagavatam. That is medicine, is the tonic, that will revive your spiritual life. So then, by the blessings of Vaishnavas, I got some mercy of actually spending 7 weeks at Govardhaniko village studying Srimad Bhagavatam with so many kind of devotees who actually, almost like living Bhagavatams. They so much imbibe the culture, the whole culture there and everything, every corner is like a culture of Srimad Bhagavatam, interactions between devotees. And the words, the topics for conversations around the, prasadam table, it's all Srimad Bhagavatam. It was phenomenal. And I spent those 6 weeks hearing and chanting with Bhaktas. There was like a Bhakta course, studying entire Srimad Bhagavatam. So I felt so humbled as well. The Bhaktas there was doing, far better than me in spiritual life, and their topics and realizations was far deeper than mine. So it was very, very humbling experience. But at the same time, it was like a revival. It was like this ventilator, starting to push some oxygen in my lungs and reviving my spiritual life. And that was like, I would say, almost like a very strong revival of my spiritual life. And then I developed so much faith in Srimad Bhagavatam that this is actually the way to go. There's so much nectar there and so much wisdom, and you can spend almost like a lifetime diving deep in this Bhagavatam and understanding it deeper and deeper and more, and experiencing Krishna in the pages of Bhagavatam. And then another second time I had this great fortune to associate with Srimad Bhagavatam was in Govardhan Sadhana Ashram, when I went further, to deepen my connection with Srimad Bhagavatam, which Vaisheshika Prabhu and Keshava Bharati Maharaj for many years, he took to the heart the Srila Prabhupada's instruction to study his books. They were very great and legendary book distributors. But at the same time, simultaneously, year after year, they very humbly, and dedicatedly, from the time, when they heard from Prabhupada that you must study his books. So with great dedication, year after year, they study Prabhupada's books, and for many years they've been meeting as well in Vrindavan, and giving, they make like a vrata, a vow, to study Srimad Bhagavatam and other Prabhupada's books during the time of Kartik. So after dedication, so many years, so they decided to do, in a Vrindavan, which during month of Kartik, which is such a potent month, they decided to make their pilgrimage into Srila Prabhupada's books and teachings, hearing and chanting from, this most elevated devotee, Srila Prabhupada himself. And Govardhan Hill is just across the road. you as soon as you wake up, you see another side of the road is Govardhan Hill, where Krishna performed his most wonderful pastimes. So I had this fortune to spend the 3 weeks of just hearing and chanting, and I was thinking it's gonna be so austere, because they're doing 5 hours of Srimad Bhagavatam. But I thought, I have to go to this austerity, to revive my spiritual life further. So for those 3 weeks, and the devotees who has been so dedicated to Prabhupada's instruction, took it to the heart, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and other books, year after year after year, they definitely developed very strong taste and inspiration for Srila Prabhupada's teachings and transcendental sound vibration, Shabda Brahman, so that by their association, at least to some extent, at least for the time being, it kind of brushes on you that inspiration and taste to study and hear Srimad Bhagavatam. And actually, it wasn't austere at all. It was actually really nectar for those 5 hours hearing and chanting. And we went through many, actually, cantos in that 3 weeks. I think it was like a 5 or 6 cantos we managed to get through, and they did, I think, entire Bhagavatam. During that time I had to leave earlier, but this message of Bhagavatam starts shining through when you go through it. Of course, with studying, very systematically, verse by verse, and discussing it is a very wonderful way to do it. It's not like there are a number of ways how we can study Bhagavatam. But there's another way of just going through the whole teachings, and you start catching the message of Bhagavatam when you're going through the text and the purports and so many cantos, one after another. you start to catch this, essential message of Bhagavatam of ultimately complete detachment from this material world, and complete and utter attachment 100% to Krishna, culminating, in his pastimes in Vrindavan. So this the whole journey starts to become very, very apparent and strong by studying Bhagavatam. So I have to admit, very humbly that this dedication that I did. Although Prabhupada very much wanted us to get completely sell out to the mission, we shouldn't do it at the expense of our hearing and chanting. And of course, I know that you very much emphasize and strongly study Srimad Bhagavatam in Bhaktivedanta Manor community, and you have many luminous, bright devotees who actually exemplifying and mirroring Srimad Bhagavatam's culture and teachings. We are so fortunate. But I just wanted to get off my chest, my personal experience, because, often as well when we finish our, whatever the, initial Gita life and then Bhakti Shastri, and also not so many people in the movement have did Bhakti Vaibhav. You still count just a handful of people who actually did Bhakti Vaibhav. So there is so much more for us to study after we did our Bhakti Shastri. But there is a tendency, to put the books, I did my Bhakti Shastri, or even if you did a Bhakti Vaibhav, okay, I did my all study now it's time to get into the mission. And we there is a tendency to some extent to neglect our study again and put it aside because I done all my studies, because that's actually even mentality in the material world. I did my school, I did my college or university or PhD. Now it's time to get into working world. I have no time to study, but it's actually the most successful people, even material world, are those who have do a lifetime study and dedication. So what will speak for us, we know that hearing and chanting, it takes us to perfection. We should never stop. So we should increase, the quality of our hearing and chanting after we did all the degrees and etc. in Krishna consciousness that Prabhupada wanted us. We actually then need to increase the quality and connection and absorb deeper and deeper in that transcendental sound vibration. And it will enhance so much as we study Srimad Bhagavatam. Actually, many acharyas stated that it's not even possible to overcome your anarthas. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, unless you really absorb into Sambandha Jnana, you actually have this understanding and connection and attraction to Krishna. You won't be able to chant the holy name with purity. They state, that it's almost impossible to come to pure stage of chanting unless you actually deeply absorb yourself and understand Krishna in the pages of Bhagavatam. And that deepens our relationship with the holy name. It deepens our relationship with Radha Gokulananda. I think you're having the darshan of Radha Gokulananda. It will deepens after very good session of japa. When we are having much deeper realization what we are chanting. After we study Srimad Bhagavatam very nicely, we will have much higher awareness and consciousness and realization that holy name is non-different from Krishna. And after this, deep and absorbed chanting session, when approach the deities, we'll see completely different experience and reciprocation of seeing the deities Radha Gokulananda and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Nityananda will be completely different experience. And when we approach Srila Prabhupada, they will reveal themselves to us because our consciousness and the heart becomes purified. So So I'm actually just repeating Shivaram Swami's, realization, and my personal realization is that, he's saying that, just to sell yourself out to the mission, but neglect your hearing and chanting. His Holiness Shivaram Swami in Shuddha Bhakti Chintamani, he calls it a lazy person's intelligence. So this is not to minimize, of course, the devotees who are giving their life to the mission. This is wonderful, but there is a certain as well influence there. Personally speaking, is probably different, for the devotees, but personally speaking, I could admit that it was a certain degree of laziness there in my life, that I allowed myself to neglect such a significant, it's fundamental, ABCD of Krishna consciousness, of study of Srimad Bhagavatam. And I can, say that this study of Srimad Bhagavatam revolutionized, like it says, that this Bhagavatam is meant to revolutionize the lives in a misdirected civilization. So despite of the fact that I worked so hard, I had to become revived by Srimad Bhagavatam again, and come to, more inspired state of Krishna consciousness. I've been completely, revived to some extent anyway. And it revived other aspects of my Krishna consciousness by studying Srimad Bhagavatam, and revived my chanting, and revived my connection to the deities, and revived my connection with Srila Prabhupada more, and with spiritual master. So I would say it's a completely revival experience, this benefit of that is promised actually in Srimad Bhagavatam for all of us. That revival is there. So we really need to boil the milk. And I think you are so expert yourselves in Bhaktivedanta manner that you have entire department of boiling the milk. I don't know how it was running during the pandemic, that you have a department that makes burfis, isn't it? This basically a boiling milk department. I don't know whether it still was functioning in the same capacity, or still in the same capacity. So it's entire department that boils the milk, and it, the milk is kind of very runny and etc. Whoever has ever made burfi, and it kind of gets just thicker and thicker and thicker. That it has become, I think, for many devotees, almost like a number one reason to come to Bhaktivedanta Manor, on a pilgrimage to get some Mangalarati sweet that has been like boiled and become so nectarian. So actually, I was taking part in this devotee care seminar facilitated by Gauranga Prabhu, and he was saying, that one of the, not maybe one, but the most fundamental need in our movement now is actually devotees who are very connected with Srimad Bhagavatam, who are very connected to the holy name, who are very connected with hearing and chanting, who are very connected to the deities. Of course, we already have a very strong connection with Prashadam. That's usually not a big problem. But even there, we can increase our quality of honoring Prasadam. I had some amazing experiences actually of taking Prasadam in the right consciousness. You can experience Krishna, and Krishna's mercy in Prasadam. But we also need very much, that this quality that comes from the boiling the milk, boiling our consciousness by the fire of Bhagavatam, that it makes the consciousness kind of thicker and thicker and sweeter and sweeter. And as we know, just the presence of one very luminous and great devotee in our presence, we feel that inspiration and purity. But if we have more and more, and like in Bhaktivedanta Manor, you have so many luminous, bright, connected devotees whenever we turn on every corner. And that, connection creates that collective presence of Krishna that is described, that Krishna's mind can become manifested, the pure Krishna's mind with his full opulences and beauty and nectar and, unlimited opulences can become manifest and in that presence of devotees who are so inspired and purified and illuminated. And because ultimately, what else we have to give? We can make so many strategies. We can make this wonderful, use various tools and etc. ways to, attract people to Krishna consciousness. But unless we are ourselves attracted to Krishna and his names, his qualities and pastimes and Srimad Bhagavatam, how are we going to keep the people that we attracted, through our strategies? The only thing that's going to keep us in the long term, and of course there are various things that we do, to care for devotees physically, emotionally, and relationships has to be there, and so many things. But ultimately, it is our connection to Krishna that's gonna keep us in the moment until the end of life, until hopefully perfect our life and go to Goloka Vrindavan and take shelter at Krishna's lotus feet. But for the people who also come to this moment, who come through the initial stage of enthusiasm, of prasadam and learning the mridanga, and doing some exciting preaching, this book distribution, and etc. But ultimately, what's gonna keep us is that connection to Krishna, and the connection to Krishna that we experience through other devotees that have that connection to Krishna, that will come through the devotees who have that connection to their mouths, that transcendental vibration will come and attract us. So this is what ultimately we have to give, if you don't have that, there is ultimately, other things will be just on some physical and emotional platform. They may keep people around to some extent. But, if you don't see people who are truly inspired and dedicated in Krishna consciousness, then we can actually subconsciously lose our faith. Externally, we may be practicing Krishna consciousness, but internally, and it happened to me at times that internally, you kind of lose a little bit of faith that they can make it in this lifetime. You're starting postponing and thinking, maybe it's some another life. But the anarthas are so overwhelming. The struggle is so overwhelming. You start kind of losing faith that we can cross, this struggle of anarthas. And if you see as well senior devotees also struggling, there with their taste and their inspiration, then what hope we have as a movement. Actually, it will be just maybe a handful of fortunate souls who cross this ocean material existence, but is actually meant for everyone. This process is so powerful. It definitely can deliver every single one of us, but we need more and more devotees who are actually deeply connected with this. So we shouldn't neglect, if we don't care so much about ourselves, then we should do it for others. And we should find devotees who are deeply connected and submissively inquire from them, spend time with them, hearing and chanting and reviving our own personal connection and a taste for Krishna consciousness. So I'll stop here and see if there are any devotees who have any comments or questions.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for an amazing Srimad Bhagavatam class. You talked to us about a lot of your personal experiences, a lot of your travels, and also gave us amazing pastimes of your time in Govardhan Eco Village. You started the class off by giving us an understanding of how to approach Srimad Bhagavatam with submission and humility. And of course, you mentioned at least 3 times how Prabhupada is the transparent via medium of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and what he has actually done for us in his sacrifice in bringing this Amala Purana to us in this form in English. And that is a mighty feat that he has actually done for us. Of course, there are many, many accolades that Srila Prabhupada has brought Srimad Bhagavatam, not only Srimad Bhagavatam, but as you said in your class, the morning programs, the songs, the process, the perfect system, and the science of this amazing Puran. We do have a lot of questions. Devotees have been really, relishing in your delivery and nectarian class. So At first, you mentioned about how you were struggling in order to manage your time between seva, service, as well as the sadhana of reading, chanting, hearing, etc. And how you actually managed to go to the holy dhams to take solace and reach out to some of those saintly personalities in Vrindavan. And you found that message and solace in His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrita Maharaj. So nice to hear. Maybe in your time since then, you can share how you have been able to then, therefore, after that, have created more of a balance in your service versus your sadhana. And alongside that, maybe you can share some tools and tips as to how devotees can also balance their seva and sadhana.
Thank you. That's very, very good question, and it is a very challenging thing for all of us because Prabhupada has given us this mission, and He did wanted us to really push on with this mission. So if you read in the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains, that the highest thing is to always remember Him and never forget Him, and is a swift deliverer for those who do that. And then if you cannot do that, then the next stage is to practice the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. And then it says, by practicing those principles of Bhakti Yoga, you will develop desire for Him, to attain Him. So this is the essence, if we can somehow or another, by associating with devotees who have desire for Krishna, that can inspire us for some attraction, because that is the fundamental thing in the beginning, and this is represented by Madan Mohan and Sanatana Goswami. That first thing is to Madan Mohan means attractor of the Cupid. So we need to transfer this attraction to material thing that is distracting us and slowing us down, and become attracted to Krishna. And that is done by Sambandha Jnana, because that is coming through Srimad Bhagavatam, and especially from the devotees, as it says in this purport. Even Shukadeva Goswami was hearing from Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva was hearing from Narada Muni. All the most elevated persons, liberated souls, was catching that fire and attraction to Krishna from another elevated soul. So, of course, we are so busy, and also our spiritual masters as well, when they come as well, it's usually like a few days, and they will also come, go away again. So we need to somehow or another find a time in our life where we can just solely and wholly for the long period of time, or longer periods of time, to become completely absorbed in Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing and chanting, and especially from those who already have, that strong attraction and taste for Srimad Bhagavatam. Because ultimately there is no other way to get it, that nectar. Is only that nectar will come because Bhakti is manifests herself, Bhakti Devi manifests herself from those who have Bhakti already, who are flourishing, who Bhakti is manifesting in their heart. The Bhakti gets transferred from one heart to another. So in order to catch that Bhakti in our own hearts, we need to associate with those who have, that Bhakti and devotion. And Srimad Bhagavatam says that there has to be a certain prolonged period of time. So whatever it means, going to the holy dham and hearing from the people, not just, going to MVT and take pizza, and etc., which is also can be there. But, actually just prolonged hearing and chanting with the people who have a taste, that will awaken, at least to some extent, by the mercy of Madan Mohan, that transition from attraction for material and to Cupid and lust, that attraction will start awaken to Krishna. And when you want something, you're going to get the time to do it. That's the essence, with this struggling to balance things, because naturally the soul is looking for Ananda. So it's going to do the things that gives us pleasure. So if we catch, this Madan Mohan lotus feet and become starting attracted to Krishna, then we'll find the time for it. we may get to, somehow another, what I do, I just get to bed early. It's really finding time for sadhana means, especially during this pandemic, it's possible to do. Of course, when things reopen, we'll have so many evening programs, so we'll have to see. But, early to bed and early to rise is still possible, at least a few times a day. A few times a week. And then we can have a very solid sadhana as well in the morning. So when a little desire for Krishna awakens, we'll find time for that. So we have to remember that all our efforts of sadhana is to actually awaken attraction for Krishna. And as soon as that starts coming, and whether it is, of course we have a prasadam, but then in the holy name, in kirtan, and Srimad Bhagavatam especially, then we'll find time for that. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. Thank you. It sort of kind of like leads on to the next question that Sutta Prabhu has asked on the chat is that, do you feel your time in the sacrifice of the mission gave you more scope to enter the Bhagavatam, or would you rewind time and do things differently?
Yes, so that sacrifice is no doubt, absolutely no doubt, it helps, and it's significant and fundamental actually to access Srimad Bhagavatam. But I don't know, I don't think that we need to come to the point of suffocating ourselves, to give ourselves the mission to that extent that we are like on the verge, of blooping or something like that, or just completely losing the taste. Because we can see, we did see in the movement, it does happen to devotees who do burn themselves out. And somehow or another, I was fortunate to revive, myself by some, causeless mercy. I don't know why I was able to, maintain my Krishna consciousness. But, it doesn't happen in every single time. In every single situation, as we can see, devotees who did phenomenal, wonderful, wonderful service, and all glorious. We are sitting down, and experiencing Krishna consciousness ourselves because of their sacrifice. It's just absolutely wonderful what they did, But there is this tendency, of like a riding on the success. Sometimes we ride, struggling, and sometimes we even be riding on a success. When there's a great success in Krishna consciousness, you just want to spend more and more time, on something that is really working. So you can neglect Krishna consciousness because of the success or because of struggle. So that sacrifice, it must be there. But, I would not put myself again if I have to relive, my life, to the extent. But I guess, one advantage that I seen, how much difference it can make. And that is actually very, very significant for us. I was actually looking into this point. Shivaram Swami is bringing this point in his new book, Sankalpa Kaumudi. He was making the significant point that, we have a sadhana and sadhya, that our goal will be achieved by our activities. Our activities that we do in a material sense, as we read in a purport. If you want to get a medical profession, you have to go and go to medical college, and the result will be you're gonna get a medical qualification. So we have this very lofty goal of pure devotion to Krishna, and we have many intermediate goals. Like for a lot of us is crossing the anartha nivriti, and coming to nishta is one of the most significant next step in our life. So if it seems that we are not achieving, of course, ultimate goal is far, but if we're struggling to achieve our next step, coming to nishta and purifying our heart, so that means we have to look into our activities and our practices. That means our practices are not leading us to sadhya. Our practices are not leading us to nishta, and we have to look, what is it, why not? Because we should get a purification of the heart by following this process properly. We should get, cleansing of anarthas if we follow this process properly. So therefore, we have to look at it. What is our activities? If we are not satisfied in a stage where we are now in Krishna consciousness, we shouldn't blame anybody else. A temple president, department head, no time, or whoever else conditioned soul finds to blame. We actually need to look into our quality of our practices. Are we actually following the process properly? And if we are, then we will be getting the experience, we'll feeling the purification of the heart, and we'll be feeling transformation of consciousness, and we'll be feeling, awakening of some attraction to Krishna. So if we are following, and we should learn as soon as possible with what is the process, because usually we end up doing so many things that is just like attractive to the senses, or some things that are pushing to the time. But we should actually get a very balanced and clear understanding of what it is, and try to sincerely practice it. And most importantly, catch a lotus feet of a person who has got a great attraction for Krishna consciousness, not just kind of externally, looking as a very nice devotee, but actually having a very genuine attraction to Krishna. And that will really start pushing us forward. We have an artha nivriti, but at some point we have to start practicing artha pravriti. On one hand, because otherwise the purification becomes such a struggle, such a hard work, to go to our anarthas, if we just working through them one by one. But if we have a certain attraction to Krishna, we're starting to cultivate, attraction to holy name of Krishna, his quality, his pastime, his deities, his opulences, etc. Then that starts pushing us forward to our anartha nivriti, that force of attraction that soul is looking for. It will start pushing us forward. So yeah, we do really definitely need sacrifice in the mission, but not at the expense of our quality hearing and chanting, and with the quality people.
Thank you for that really well-rounded sort of a response to the question, and you've covered so much ground in that response. So thank you so much. We have one final question. I can see time is short, but that's from Harika Mataji from the Temple Room. And she's asking, what responsibility do leaders have? For example, a fatherhead or figurehead of family or ashram leaders, to help the ones under their protection achieve this connection to Krishna. And not to forget, how can they build out our friendship and care for devotees more than just being role models? Because sometimes it takes away from the personalism and the heart-to-heart care when leaders have to become just role models. They forget to inspire us and become raw managing people. It's most difficult responsibility, of course, but because it's not easy to make everyone happy. What practices can leaders encourage to build more connection with Krishna from the heart?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. Thank you so much. It is actually very, very interesting. In that devotee care course that I took online, Gauranga Prabhu was explaining actually very nicely this point that Mataji is asking, that there's three principles, very, very fundamental principles in order to provide care for anyone. And it's very interesting actually, because devotee care committee, they've been, for a good while now around, but we didn't hear so much from them for a while, and only they started to kind of more appear. And kind of was wondering, and I knew that devotees are so dedicated and so actually empowered in the devotee care committee. So I realized from that lecture that what they were doing for a good few years, they were actually coming to the common ground of what is actually devotee care. We're trying to understand themselves, because usually we get some task and we just get into the action. Okay, let's do it. But they spend a good few years just trying to come to the common understanding what actually devotee care means, and what they crystallized that devotee care starts from self-care, and it's not, the new age idea, of kind of doing some aromatherapy and all that kind of silly things. But actually, self-care means what we discussed today, this very, very strong and good sadhana connection and, balance, hearing and chanting. There is nothing more inspiring for the devotees than to see, like a Rajarshi leader, like a Gauranga Prabhu was delivering devotee care, the seminar. It's a Rajarshi. He knows Bhagavatam in and out. He knows Bhagavad Gita in and out. Every word that comes from his mouth in the teaching is actually Srimad Bhagavatam, and based on Srimad Bhagavatam. So you can see that he spent, years actually establishing this connection with Srimad Bhagavatam and knows it in and out, the scriptures and Mahabharata, etc. So that's the first point, is to have that connection, for the leaders themselves. And then the second point is that we need to have a person, whether we are leader, whoever we are, that, through our strong sadhana, we still, no matter how advanced we are, we still need another person that we can go through, somebody who can inspire us in Krishna consciousness. So that's the second point, that we, whether we are leader or, a young devotee, we need to have some sort of mentor, a friend where we can go really deep and approach when we are going through struggle. So then these two first things, this is self-care and having somebody to go through, only then we can actually inspire somebody on very high level. Otherwise, we'll be lacking in our inspiration, because we ourselves will be lacking inspiration and empowerment. So if we have these two things very strongly and established in our heart, and this is basically the words of, many years of study of devotee care committee, that when these two things are there, then, and only then we can provide, very high care for the devotees. And it will, if this will be lacking, it's not that we cannot provide, it still will be to a certain extent, and it's still, we should do it, no doubt. But if we want, this very high care and inspiration, we have to, do these first two things.
Thank you. You said there were three principles. Maybe I missed the second one.
So actually, first one is self-care and very strong connection with Srimad Bhagavatam. Second one is to have a person and a mentor that you can go to. And a third one, only then, after you've done these two things, is the devotee care itself, that we provide the care, after we establish this foundation, then we can provide a very high quality care for others.
Perfect. Thank you so much for clarifying that. Amazing class, amazing as always, great association. As you said earlier on, hopefully we will be in person together and then we will be able to associate more. I did have one small, very quick question from one Pada Prabhu in the temple room who's sitting right in front of the camera. And that actually, his question was that, is it true or recommended that we should not move past the first two cantos if we still have material attachments, because then we will misinterpret or cause offense, etc.? Or will reading more pastimes purify us?
Well, that's a very good question. Thank you. So I never heard anything like that you shouldn't go beyond first and second canto. And we definitely should, as far as I'm concerned, go Bhagavatam from beginning until the end and restart it again, and then go to Chaitanya Charitamrita and restart it again and go again and again and again through those books, because we are, as I mentioned, to go through our nartas, we need to awaken the desire for Krishna. And when we see how wonderful is Krishna, how wonderful is his pastimes, how wonderful is his reciprocation, loving reciprocation with the devotees, then that will help us to go through anartha nivritti. Otherwise, it becomes, as mentioned, it's such a struggle to go to this unlimited anarthas. But as soon as you want something, even the anarthas may be slowing you down, it will be much easier. So we should definitely read, through, all the cantos. When we finish, go to Chaitanya Charitamrita and then start again and do it again and again and again and again. And then Prabhupada will be pleased and that attraction will awaken by his mercy.
Thank you once again, Prabhuji. In the words of Nitai Mata here on the chat, she's saying, wonderful class, bringing us reality of practical experience in this beautiful movement, giving a lot of practical importance, chanting and hearing, especially giving your personal experiences, as those are very relevant to most of us. Thank you very much, Prabhu.